The courtroom air was stale, smelling of cheap coffee and despair. Officer Eric Daniels sat in the witness stand, a smirk plastered on his face, confident that the two black men in orange jumpsuits were about to lose their freedom for assaulting a police officer. He had the badge, he had the gun, he had the system. But he didn't check their IDs closely enough. He didn't know that the men he arrested were elite Tier 1 operators. And he certainly didn't know that the man about to push open those double doors wasn't just a lawyer. He was a rear admiral in the United States Navy, bringing the full weight of the U.S. government down on Daniels' head. This is the story of a corrupt cop who picked a fight with the wrong warriors, and the karma that hit him harder than a Hellfire missile. The heat radiating off the asphalt in San Diego was enough to distort the air, making the horizon shimmer in a haze of humidity and exhaust. Officer Eric Daniels sat in his cruiser, the air conditioning blasting against his face. He was a 10-year veteran of the force, a man whose career had plateaued 5 years ago. He was known in the precinct, though not for bravery or detective skills. He was known for his numbers. Daniels brought in arrests, he wrote tickets, he kept the riffraff out of the affluent neighborhoods of La Jolla. He was a hammer, and to him the world was full of nails. He took a sip of his lukewarm soda and adjusted his radar gun. That's when he saw it. A matte black Ford F-150 Raptor, lifted with tinted windows and pristine rims rolling through the intersection. It wasn't speeding, it wasn't swerving, it was driving exactly the speed limit. To Daniels, that was suspicious. Nobody drives exactly the speed limit unless they're hiding something. He pulled out into traffic, lights off, tailing the truck. He ran the plates, no warrants, registered to Jamal Brooks. The name didn't ring a bell, but the truck looked too expensive for the demographic he had already built in his head. Inside the Raptor, Chief Petty Officer Jamal Brooks sighed, his knuckles tightening slightly on the steering wheel. Sitting next to him was Petty Officer First Class Darius King. They were both in civilian clothes, jeans, fitted t-shirts, baseball caps. They had just returned from a 6-month deployment that didn't exist on paper. They were tired. They were sore. They just wanted to get to Jamal's house and sleep for 3 days. "Here we go," Jamal muttered, checking his mirrors. "You good, Darius?" Darius, nursing a fractured rib from a botched extraction in a place they couldn't name, shifted painfully in the passenger seat. "I'm good, Chief. Just keep your hands visible. I don't have the energy for drama today." Jamal pulled over, cut the engine, and rolled down all 4 windows. It was a textbook maneuver to show they weren't a threat. They placed their hands on the dashboard and steering wheel. Daniels approached slowly, his hand resting on the grip of his Glock 19. He saw 2 large black men. He saw the size of their arms, the thick necks, the calm demeanor. He didn't see discipline. He saw defiance. "License and registration," Daniels barked, not bothering with a greeting. "Good afternoon, officer," Jamal said, his voice level and controlled. "My license is in my wallet, back right pocket. Registration is in the glove box. My passenger will reach for it if you allow." "I didn't ask for a life story," Daniels snapped. "Driver, get out of the car." Jamal paused. "Officer, for a traffic stop, I am safer inside the vehicle. I haven't committed a crime." "I said get out of the car," Daniels shouted, unholstering his taser and pointing it through the window. "Failure to comply. Get out now." Darius looked at Jamal. They had faced insurgents, terrorists, and warlords. They had stared down death in dark alleys in Somalia and mountains in Afghanistan. This shaking, sweating cop with a power complex was dangerous, but not in the way he thought he was. "Doing it now," Jamal said. He slowly unbuckled and stepped out, raising his hands. Daniels slammed him against the side of the truck. "Spread him." "Officer, I have a fractured rib. Please be careful with the passenger," Jamal warned calmly. "Shut up!" Daniels kicked Jamal's ankles apart. He patted him down aggressively, finding nothing but a wallet and a folded pocket knife, legal in California. Then Daniels saw the military ID in the wallet. He paused for a split second. Navy. But his ego was already in overdrive. He couldn't back down now. He had already escalated. In his mind, these weren't officers or gentlemen. They were affirmative action hires who thought they owned the road. "Military, huh?" Daniels sneered, tossing the wallet onto the hood of the hot truck. "Cooks? Janitors? What ship you sweeping floors on?" Jamal didn't answer. He stared straight ahead. "I asked you a question, boy." Daniels shoved him. That was the mistake. Jamal's training kicked in. His body went rigid, not to attack, but to restrain the lethal force he was capable of unleashing. I am a Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. I advise you to check your tone and your procedure, officer. Daniels turned red. He felt small. He hated feeling small. He holstered the taser and grabbed his handcuffs. You're under arrest. For what? Darius called out from the truck. Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer, Daniels improvised, snapping the cuffs on Jamal's wrists so tight the metal bit into the bone. I haven't touched you, Jamal said, wincing. You threatened me, Daniels lied. He marched Jamal to the cruiser and shoved him into the back. Then he turned to Darius. Your turn, big man. Get out. Darius stepped out slowly. Officer, you are making a mistake of career-ending proportions. Daniels laughed, a hollow, ugly sound. I am the law out here. Get in the car. As he drove them away, leaving the expensive truck on the side of the road to be impounded by his buddy's towing company, he looked in the rearview mirror. You two are going to rot in county until the judge sees you on Monday, Daniels gloated. Hope you like bologna sandwiches. Jamal looked at Darius. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They communicated in silent nods. Wait for the opening. The precinct smelled of bleach and unwashed bodies. Daniels marched them through the booking area, parading them like trophies. Got 2 big ones today, Sarge, he called out to the desk sergeant, a tired-looking man named Paul Bennett. Bennett looked up over his spectacles. He saw the 2 men, the way they walked heads up, scanning the room, analyzing exits and threats. He saw the lack of fear in their eyes. Bennett had been in the Marines back in the day. His gut twisted. What's the charge, Eric? He asked, voice cautious. Assault on an officer, resisting, disorderly. And I'm tacking on failure to identify for the passenger, Daniel said, tossing the paperwork on the high desk. I gave you my ID, Darius said calmly. Quiet. Daniel slammed his hand on the counter. Bennett looked at the IDs. Jamal Brooks, Darius King. He ran the names through the local database. Nothing. Clean records. Eric, Bennett said quietly. Did you check their military status? Yeah, Navy. Probably supply guys. They got mouths on them, Sarge. Real disrespectful. Bennett looked at Jamal. Rank. Chief Petty Officer E7, Jamal said. Naval Special Warfare Group 2. The room went silent. The typing in the background stopped. Naval Special Warfare. SEALs. Bennett's face drained of color. He looked at Daniels, who was busy filling out an evidence bag, oblivious. Daniels, Bennett hissed. Come here. Daniels walked over, annoyed. What? Do you know what Group 2 is? Bennett whispered harshly. I don't care if they're Group 10. They assaulted me. They are SEALs, you idiot, Bennett said. Tier 1 operators. If you cook this charge up, you better uncook it right now. Daniels scoffed, his arrogance blinding him. SEALs? Look at them. They don't look like the guys in the movies. They're lying. Stolen valor, probably. Just book 'em, Paul. I'm going to write the report so tight they won't be able to breathe. Daniels walked back to the men. He leaned in close to Jamal's face. Sarge thinks you're special, he whispered. But in here, you're just another inmate. I'm going to make sure you lose that rank. I'm going to make sure you get a dishonorable discharge. You'll be lucky to get a job as a security guard at the mall when I'm done with you. Jamal looked Daniels in the eye. I want my phone call. Phone's broken, Daniels smirked. That is a violation of my rights, Darius stated. Sue me, Daniels laughed. Take him to the holding cell, general population. General population on a Friday night was a zoo. Drunks, brawlers, and petty thieves. When Jamal and Darius walked in, the noise level dropped. The inmates sensed the predator energy. These weren't victims. They found a corner and sat on the concrete bench. He's blocking the call, Darius said quietly. He can't block it forever, Jamal replied. We have a briefing Monday at 800. If we aren't there, the alarm bells go off. That's 3 days, Jamal. 3 days in this hole while that cop destroys our truck and drags our names through the mud. Jamal closed his eyes. He was meditating, lowering his heart rate. Patience, Darius. The enemy has overextended. We let him commit. We let him dig the hole so deep he can't climb out. Saturday passed. The food was inedible. The smell was atrocious. Daniels came by twice to taunt them, tapping on the glass. Still tough guys, he mouthed. By Sunday morning, the shift changed. A young rookie officer named Jessica Reed was doing rounds. She saw the 2 men sitting in the corner, distinct from the chaos around them. They were doing push-ups, perfectly synchronized, 500 in a row. She checked the log. Assault on officer. She looked at the men again. They didn't look like the type to assault a cop and lose. If they had assaulted Daniels, Daniels would be in the ICU. She walked over to the bars. "Hey," she said softly. Jamal stood up and approached. "Good morning, officer. You guys are Navy?" she asked. "My brother's in the Navy stationed in San Diego." "We are," Jamal said. "Officer, we have been denied legal counsel and our phone call for 48 hours. Officer Daniels has violated procedure. If we do not contact our command by this evening, this station is going to have a very serious problem on its hands, not from us, but from the people looking for us." Officer Reed bit her lip. She knew Daniels was dirty. Everyone knew, but the blue wall of silence was thick. "I can't let you out," she whispered. "I don't need out," Jamal said, his voice intense but kind. "I need you to make a call for me. Just one call. It will save your career when the dust settles." She looked left and right. "What's the number?" Jamal recited a number from memory. It wasn't a local lawyer. It wasn't a bail bondsman. "Tell the person who answers, Viking is in the cage, code black, San Diego, downtown precinct. That's it." Reed nodded and walked away quickly. She went to the break room, hands shaking. She dialed the number. It rang once. "Tactical Operations Center. Identify," a voice answered. It sounded like gravel crunching under boots. This is a friend. I have a message. Viking is in the cage, code black, San Diego, downtown precinct." There was a pause that felt heavy. "Confirm location. Downtown precinct. Yes. Who is the arresting officer?" "Officer Daniels." "Understood. Clear the line." The line went dead. Reed stared at the phone. She had no idea what she had just done, but she felt a shiver run down her spine. Back in the cell, Jamal sat back down. "Did you do it?" Darius asked. "She did," Jamal said, a small smile touching his lips. "Who did you have her call?" "The old man," Jamal said. Darius's eyes widened. "You called the Admiral personally. He told us to call him if we ever got in a situation we couldn't shoot our way out of." Jamal shrugged. "I'd say this qualifies." Darius laughed, a deep rumble in his chest. "Daniels is a dead man walking." Sunday afternoon, Officer Eric Daniels was feeling good. He had spent the weekend finalizing his report. He had been creative. He wrote about how Jamal had lunged at him, how Darius had reached for the waistband. He sprinkled in buzzwords like furtive movements and verbal aggression. He knew the district attorney, a man named Charles Ford, would eat it up. Ford was running for re-election and needed to look tough on crime. Daniels walked into the station whistling. He sat at his desk and logged into the digital evidence server. He needed to upload his body cam footage. He plugged in the camera. The software loaded. He watched the video. It didn't match his report, not even close. On the video, Jamal was polite. Darius was calm. Daniels was the one screaming, cursing, and escalating. The video clearly showed him kicking Jamal's legs and shoving him when he was already compliant. Daniels chewed his lip. This was a problem. He looked around. The squad room was busy. No one was watching. He opened the editing software. He couldn't delete the whole thing. That would look suspicious. But he could corrupt the file. A little glitch here, a missing audio segment there, just enough to make the defense's case ambiguous. He worked on it for an hour, sweating. He managed to delete the audio of the racial slur he had muttered under his breath when putting Jamal in the car. He corrupted the video file right at the moment he shoved Jamal, making the screen pixelate into gray noise. "Perfect," he whispered. "Equipment malfunction." He submitted the file. Suddenly, the station doors opened. A man in a sharp suit walked in. He looked like a lawyer, the kind who cost $1,000 an hour. "I'm here for Jamal Brooks and Darius King," the man said to the desk sergeant. His voice carried across the room. Daniel stood up. "I'm the arresting officer. Who are you?" "My name is Michael Whitaker," the lawyer said. "I'm their counsel." "They're being arraigned tomorrow morning," Daniel said, stepping forward, trying to use his physical size to intimidate. "You can see them then." Whitaker looked at Daniels with a mixture of pity and amusement. "Officer Daniels, is it? I've already filed an emergency motion. I'm seeing them now, and I suggest you don't stand in my way. You have already accumulated enough liability for one lifetime." Daniels blinked. "Liability? I caught 2 thugs assaulting a cop." Whitaker smiled. It was a shark smile. "Is that what happened? We'll see." Daniels watched as Bennett led the lawyer back to the cells. He felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Who were these guys? He went to the captain's office. Captain Richard Bennett was a political climber who hated waves. "Cap, we got a situation," Daniel said. "Those 2 guys I brought in, they got a high-powered lawyer." The captain didn't look up from his paperwork. "So convict them and move on. Your report solid?" Solid as a rock, Daniels lied. Good, don't worry about the lawyer. D.A. Ford will handle it. We need the stats. Daniels left the office, reassuring himself. It was fine. It was just a lawyer. He had the badge. The judge, Patricia Klein, was known for siding with police 99% of the time. She hated disrespectful defendants. Daniels went home, drank 3 beers, and went to sleep. He didn't know that 3 miles away at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, a Gulfstream jet with United States Navy markings had just touched down. He didn't know that the man stepping off that plane was Rear Admiral Robert Whitaker, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. And he certainly didn't know that Michael Whitaker, the lawyer, was the admiral's brother. The trap was set. Monday morning arrived with a heavy, suffocating grayness. The San Diego courthouse was a brutalist structure of concrete and glass designed to make everyone who entered feel small. Inside courtroom 3B, the air was cold. Judge Patricia Klein sat on the bench, shuffling papers with impatient, jerky movements. She was a woman in her 60s with a reputation for maxing out sentences. She believed in law and order above all else, and to her, a police badge was a shield of infallibility. Jamal Brooks and Darius King sat at the defense table. They were still in their orange jumpsuits. Daniels had made sure they didn't get their civilian clothes back in time for the hearing. It was a psychological tactic, make them look like criminals and the judge will treat them like criminals. But it wasn't working. Even in orange polyester, Jamal and Darius sat with spines of steel. They didn't slouch, they didn't fidget. They looked like statues carved from obsidian. Officer Eric Daniels sat in the front row, bouncing his leg. He had his dress uniform on, his badge polished to a mirror shine. District Attorney Charles Ford stood up. He was a balding man with a cheap suit and a loud voice. "Your Honor," Ford began, "the state is ready to proceed. This is a clear case of 2 individuals who thought they were above the law. They were driving erratically, endangering the public, and when a heroic officer intervened, they became violent. We will prove that the defendants assaulted Officer Daniels and resisted lawful arrest." Judge Klein peered over her glasses at Jamal and Darius. "Assaulting an officer in my courtroom. That's a fast track to the state penitentiary. Proceed." Daniels took the stand. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. He didn't even blink. "Officer Daniels," Ford asked, strutting back and forth, "tell us what happened on that Tuesday." Daniels leaned into the microphone. "I observed the suspect vehicle weaving in and out of traffic. When I initiated the stop, the driver, Mr. Brooks, was immediately hostile. He refused to exit the vehicle. When he finally did, he lunged at me. I had to use physical force to restrain him for my own safety. The passenger, Mr. King, then exited the vehicle and reached for his waistband. I feared he had a weapon." "And did you capture this on your body camera?" Ford asked, knowing the answer. Daniels put on a sad, frustrated face. "I tried to, sir, but during the struggle my camera was damaged. The video file was corrupted. Technical services tried to recover it, but it was inconvenient." "Objection," Michael Whitaker said from the defense table. He didn't look up from his notepad. "Sustained," Judge Klein snapped. "Watch yourself, counselor." Ford smirked. No further questions. Michael Whitaker stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket and walked slowly toward the witness stand. He didn't look aggressive. He looked bored. "Officer Daniels," Whitaker said softly, "you said my client lunged at you. Can you define lunge?" He moved his body forward aggressively," Daniels stammered. "Interesting, because the medical report from the jail intake shows Mr. Brooks has 0 bruising on his knuckles or hands, but he has significant bruising on his ankles. How does one get bruises on the inside of their ankles if they are the one attacking?" Daniels froze. I had to sweep his legs to control him." "Ah, so you kicked him." "I performed a tactical takedown," Daniels said, his voice rising. "And Mr. King," Whitaker continued, flipping a page, "you said he reached for his waistband. Did you find a weapon?" "No, but he could have had one." "So you arrested a man for reaching?" "He failed to identify," Daniels shouted. "He refused to give me his ID." Whitaker stopped. He looked Daniels dead in the eye. "Are you sure about that, officer? You are under oath. Did Darius King refuse to give you his ID?" Daniels hesitated. He remembered tossing the wallet on the hood. He remembered seeing the military card. But he had already committed to the lie. "Yes," Daniels said. "He refused." Whitaker smiled. It was a terrifyingly genuine smile. "No further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor, but I reserve the right to recall him." Judge Klein looked at the clock. Mr. Whitaker, do you have any witnesses, or can we wrap this up? I have a lunch appointment. I do have a witness, Your Honor, Whitaker said. Actually, I have two, but the first one is running a few minutes late. He had to park a rather large vehicle. I don't have time for games, Counselor, Klein scoffed. Call your witness or I'm issuing a verdict. He is entering the building now, Whitaker said, checking his watch. And trust me, Your Honor, you will want to hear what he has to say. It concerns the corruption of the video evidence. You have 1 minute, Klein warned. The courtroom doors remained closed. Silence stretched out, heavy and awkward. Daniels smirked at the DA. The lawyer was bluffing. There was no witness. Then the floor vibrated. A subtle rhythmic thud like the approach of a storm. The double doors at the back of the courtroom didn't just open. They were pushed wide by two shore patrol officers in pristine dress whites. And then he walked in. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It wasn't just a man walking in. It was an event. He was a mountain of a man, 6'4", wearing the full-service dress blue uniform of a United States Navy Rear Admiral. The gold stripes on his sleeves shone under the courtroom lights. His chest was a colorful wall of ribbons: Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, Legion of Merit. Rear Admiral Robert Whitaker walked down the center aisle with a stride that commanded absolute silence. His face was weathered, carved from granite, with eyes that had seen things that would make Officer Daniels cry for his mother. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand and his cover hat tucked under his left arm. Officer Eric Daniels' mouth fell open. He slumped in the witness chair. He recognized the rank. He recognized the power. Judge Klein sat up straight, instinctively adjusting her robe. She had never had a flag officer in her courtroom. Admiral Whitaker stopped at the bar. He looked at Jamal and Darius. He gave them a sharp, singular nod. Jamal and Darius, despite the shackles, snapped to attention in their seats. "Who is this?" Judge Klein asked, her voice losing its edge. Michael Whitaker stepped forward. "Your Honor, the defense calls Rear Admiral Robert Whitaker, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command." The Admiral opened the gate and stepped through. He didn't take the witness stand immediately. He stood in the center of the well, looking at Daniels. "Your Honor," the Admiral said. His voice was deep, resonant, and filled the room without shouting. "I am here on behalf of the Department of the Navy to correct a grave error in your docket," Judge Klein stammered. "This is highly irregular. This is a local municipal matter." It ceased to be a local matter when Officer Daniels arrested two active-duty Tier 1 operators on classified orders, falsified a police report, and detained them in violation of the Service Member Civil Relief Act, the Admiral stated calmly. Daniels turned pale green. Tier 1, classified orders. "Objection," DA Ford squeaked, standing up. "This is hearsay. The Admiral wasn't there." Admiral Whitaker turned his head slowly to look at the DA. The look was so withering that Ford actually sat back down. "I wasn't there," the Admiral conceded, "but the United States Navy is always watching its assets." The Admiral placed the briefcase on the defense table and clicked it open. "Officer Daniels testified that his body camera malfunctioned," the Admiral said, pulling out a tablet, "and he testified that the defendants were driving erratically. He also testified that Petty Officer King failed to identify himself." The Admiral walked to the judge's bench and handed her a flash drive. "Your Honor," he continued, "Chief Brooks drives a 2024 Ford Raptor. That vehicle is equipped with a 360-degree surveillance system that records directly to a secure cloud server. Officer Daniels impounded the truck, but he couldn't impound the cloud." Daniels felt the room spinning. He gripped the arms of the chair. "We have the full video," the Admiral said. "Front, back, and interior cabin audio. Would you like to see it?" "Play it," Judge Klein whispered. Michael Whitaker connected the drive to the courtroom projector. The video sprang to life on the big screen. The courtroom watched in silence. They saw the truck driving perfectly straight at 35 miles per hour. They heard Jamal and Darius talking about their deployment, about how tired they were. Then they saw the lights. "Here we go," Jamal's voice said on the video. "You good, Darius?" They saw the stop. They saw Daniels approach with his gun already drawn. They heard the audio clearly. "Cooks, janitors, what ship you sweeping floors on?" A gasp went through the courtroom. They saw Daniels shouting. They saw Jamal calmly step out. They saw Daniels kick Jamal's ankles apart aggressively. "I'm going to make sure you lose that rank. You'll be lucky to get a job as a security guard." And then the smoking gun. On the video, Darius clearly held up his military ID. "Officer, you are making a mistake of career-ending proportions." The video ended. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Admiral Whitaker turned to Daniels. The Admiral didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which was somehow worse. "Officer Daniels," the Admiral said, "these men had just returned from a counterterrorism operation that saved the lives of 3 American aid workers. They hadn't slept in 36 hours. And yet they treated you with more respect in 5 minutes than you have shown the badge in your entire career." Judge Klein turned to Daniels. Her face was no longer friendly. It was furious. She felt played. She hated being played. "Officer Daniels," she hissed, "you are still under oath. Do you want to amend your testimony regarding the malfunctioning camera and the failure to identify?" Daniels opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the DA, who was busy stuffing papers into his briefcase, trying to distance himself from the blast radius. Daniels stuttered. "Your Honor," Admiral Whitaker interrupted, "there is one more thing." He pulled a document from his briefcase. Because these men were detained illegally, they missed a mandatory debriefing regarding national security. That makes Officer Daniels' interference a federal issue. I've spoken with the FBI this morning. Agents are waiting in the hallway. Daniels' eyes bulged. "FBI? They aren't here for my sailors," the Admiral said, finally cracking a dry, cold smile. "They are here for the man who violated their civil rights under color of law." Daniels stood up, panic overtaking him. "I was just doing my job. They looked suspicious." "Sit down!" Judge Klein shouted, slamming her gavel so hard it sounded like a gunshot. "Bailiff, take Officer Daniels into custody immediately for perjury and contempt of court." The bailiff, a burly man who had watched the video with disgust, moved fast. He grabbed Daniels' arm and twisted it behind his back the exact same way Daniels had done to Jamal. "Ow! Watch the arm!" Daniels cried. "Stop resisting," the bailiff deadpanned. As Daniels was dragged out of the courtroom kicking and screaming, he locked eyes with Jamal. Jamal didn't smile. He just nodded slowly. Admiral Whitaker walked over to the defense table. Jamal and Darius stood up. "At ease, gentlemen," the Admiral said softly. "Thank you, sir," Jamal said. "Don't thank me, Chief," the Admiral replied. "You showed restraint. If you had engaged him, we'd be having a very different conversation. You did good." Judge Klein cleared her throat. She looked shaken. "All charges against Mr. Brooks and Mr. King are dismissed with prejudice," she announced. "And gentlemen, on behalf of this court, I apologize. You are free to go." Jamal and Darius walked out of the gate. The Admiral and his brother, the lawyer, flanked them. But the nightmare for Daniels wasn't over. It was just beginning. The transition from police officer to inmate is not gradual. It is violent, sudden, and absolute. Officer Eric Daniels didn't go home to his comfortable suburban house that night. He didn't sit in his recliner with a cold beer. Instead, he was processed into the system he had spent a decade feeding. He was stripped of his uniform, the polyester armor that had given him his power. He was stripped of his badge, his gun, and his dignity. In their place, he was given the same rough orange jumpsuit he had forced Jamal and Darius to wear just days before. Because he was a cop, and a newly infamous one at that, the warden couldn't place him in general population. In Gen Pop, Daniels wouldn't have lasted the night. The prison code is brutal to law enforcement, especially dirty ones. So for his own safety, Daniels was placed in administrative segregation, the hole. It was a 6-by-8-foot box of cinder blocks painted appealing institutional cream. There was a steel toilet, a thin mattress that smelled of mildew, and a slit of a window too high to see out of. For 23 hours a day, Daniels sat in silence. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that amplified the loop playing in his head, the look on the Admiral's face, the pixelated video on the projector, the sound of the gavel slamming down. But while Daniels sat in the dark, the world outside was burning his life to the ground with the brightness of 1,000 suns. The courtroom footage didn't stay sealed. It couldn't. The story was too big, the characters too perfect. A court clerk, perhaps disgusted by Daniels' lies or perhaps just sensing the moment, leaked the video file. It hit the internet like a meteor. Within hours, the Admiral and the corrupt cop was the #1 trending topic on every major platform: YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit. There was no escaping it. Millions of people watched Daniels smirk on the stand. They watched him lie. They watched the Admiral dismantle him with the cold precision of a surgeon. The internet did what the internet does best. It weaponized the truth. An army of amateur sleuths fueled by outrage began to dig. They didn't just look at the arrest of the SEALs, they looked at everything. They found Daniel's old Facebook posts filled with veiled racism and aggression. They found reviews of him on local community watch pages, stories from nurses, teachers, and delivery drivers who had been harassed by Officer 4 Alpha. The blue wall of silence, the unspoken code that protects cops from consequences, didn't just crack. It evaporated. The San Diego Police Department realized immediately that Daniels was not a soldier to be protected. He was a cancer to be cut out. The chief of police, a man who usually avoided the press, held an emergency conference on the steps of the precinct the next morning. He looked tired, his face pale under the barrage of camera flashes. "Eric Daniels does not represent the values of this department," the chief declared, his voice tight. "Effective immediately, his employment is terminated. We are scrubbing his pension. Furthermore, I have ordered a full internal audit of every arrest, every citation, and every interaction Daniels has logged in the last 5 years. If there are other victims, we will find them." Daniels heard about it from a guard who slid a tray of unidentifiable slop through the slot in his door. "Hey, ex-officer," the guard sneered. "Saw your boss on TV. You're fired, and I wouldn't count on that pension." That was the first domino. The second domino fell closer to home. Daniel's wife, Megan, was a quiet woman. She had spent 10 years walking on eggshells around Eric. She knew his temper. She knew how he liked to control the finances, the schedule, the very air in the house. She had told herself it was just stress from the job. Then she saw the video. She watched it on her phone in the kitchen while their 2 children slept. She saw the way Eric taunted Jamal and Darius. She saw the cruelty in his eyes, a specific predatory gleam she recognized from the times he had screamed at her for burning the roast or coming home 5 minutes late. She realized with a terrifying clarity that the man she lived with was a monster, and now the whole world knew it. She didn't wait for him to make bail. She didn't wait for an explanation. Megan packed 3 suitcases in a frenzy. She took the kids, the dog, and the sparse savings they had in the jar above the fridge. When Daniels finally used his one allotted phone call from the jail, dialing his home number with shaking fingers, he didn't get an answer. He got a disconnect tone. 3 days later, he was served with divorce papers in his cell. Megan had filed for an emergency restraining order, citing the video as evidence of his unstable and violent nature. She was gone. Daniels had lost his career. He had lost his family. But the avalanche wasn't done. The final crushing blow came from the federal government. The FBI investigation that Admiral Whitaker had triggered wasn't a bluff. The Bureau didn't care about traffic tickets. They cared about federal crimes. And when they looked into Daniel's finances, they found the rot. It wasn't a grand conspiracy. It was pathetic, small-time corruption. Daniels had been falsifying overtime hours for years, stealing thousands of dollars from the city. He had been pocketing cash from evidence in minor drug busts, $20 here, $50 there. It was the behavior of a man who thought no one was watching. But the FBI sees everything. Federal charges were added to the state charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, and deprivation of rights under color of law. 6 months later, the final act played out. Daniels stood in a federal courtroom. He looked like a ghost of his former self. He had lost 30 pounds. His hair was thinning and unkempt. The arrogance that had defined him was replaced by a trembling, pathetic fear. His lawyer, a public defender who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, offered no defense. The evidence was insurmountable. The federal judge looked down at Daniels with disdain. "Mr. Daniels, you were entrusted with the power to protect. You used it to bully, to steal, and to destroy. You picked a fight with men of honor because you have none yourself." The gavel came down. "I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole." As the marshals moved to shackle him, Daniels turned desperately to the gallery. He scanned the benches, his eyes wet with tears, looking for anyone, a partner, a friend, his wife, anyone who would look at him with sympathy. The benches were empty. The brothers in blue had abandoned him. His family had erased him, except for one man. Sitting in the back row, silent and unmoving, was Jamal Brooks. Jamal was wearing a sharp-tailored suit. He wasn't there to laugh. He wasn't there to shout. He was there to witness. He sat with the calm, terrifying stillness of a predator who has already won. Daniels locked eyes with him. For a moment he wanted to scream, to beg, to blame Jamal for ruining his life, but the words died in his throat. He saw the look in Jamal's eyes. It wasn't hate, it was indifference. Today, Daniels was no longer a threat, he was just a memory. Daniels was dragged out the side door, the chains rattling around his waist. Jamal watched him disappear, then stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out into the bright, blinding sunlight of a free man. 2 years had passed since the gavel fell, but the San Diego heat remained a constant, shimmering force. It baked the cracked asphalt of the old industrial district, a world away from the manicured lawns of La Jolla or the sterile, air-conditioned hallways of the courthouse. This wasn't the side of town tourists saw. It was a neighborhood of boarded-up windows, faded dreams, and young men who learned too early that the world expected the worst of them. But on the corner of 4th and Main, a new heartbeat was thumping. Jamal Brooks stood in the center of a cavernous, renovated warehouse. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the scent of sweat and leather, a smell Jamal associated with work, with progress. Above the double doors, a hand-painted sign read, Viking Defense and Leadership Academy. It wasn't a security firm. It wasn't a private military contractor. It was something far more important. After the trial, Jamal and Darius had made a choice. They had finished their service with the Navy, taking their retirements and walking away from the life of silence and shadows. They realized that their specific set of skills, discipline, emotional control, and the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos, were wasted if they only used them to hunt enemies overseas. They needed to build something here. They used every cent of the multi-million-dollar settlement from the city, the blood money from Daniel's corruption, to buy this building. They gutted it, cleaned it, and turned it into a sanctuary. Jamal watched from the sidelines as Darius King moved across the blue mats. Darius wasn't wearing body armor or carrying a rifle anymore. He was wearing a t-shirt that said, Focus over fear, and holding strike pads for a scrawny 15-year-old kid named Jordan. Jordan was fast, but he was angry. You could see it in the way he threw his punches, wild, looping, desperate. He was fighting ghosts. Stop, Darius said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the noise of the gym. Jordan froze, chest heaving. I'm hitting hard, coach. I'm hitting hard. You're hitting out of anger, Darius corrected him gently, lowering the pads. You're fighting like you hate the target. What did we talk about, Jordan? When you fight with hate, you get sloppy. You get tunnel vision. That's how you get caught. Darius tapped the side of his own head. The fight isn't out here. It's in here. You control the emotion. Don't let the emotion control you. That's what weak men do. Do you want to be a weak man with a strong punch, or do you want to be a warrior? Jordan wiped sweat from his eyes, his shoulders dropping. A warrior, coach. Good. Again, breathe first, strike second. Jamal smiled. It was the same lesson they had learned in BUD/S. The same lesson that had saved them when Officer Daniels tried to bait them into a street brawl. They were teaching these kids how to be dangerous so they never had to be violent. The front door chimed, drawing Jamal's attention. Silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun stood a man who looked out of place in this grit, yet entirely at home in command. He was older now, the lines on his face etched deeper by decades of service, but the posture was unmistakable. Rear Admiral Robert Whitaker, retired, stepped inside. He wasn't in his dress whites today. He wore a simple navy polo and carried car keys, looking like a grandfather on a golf trip. But the eyes were still sharp, scanning the room, assessing threats, analyzing exits. It was a habit that never truly left you. Jamal jogged over, wiping his hands on a towel. Admiral, I didn't know you were in town. I have some business at the base, the Admiral said, his voice warm. He reached out and shook Jamal's hand. The grip was iron, just as Jamal remembered. But I couldn't drive past without seeing what you two have built. The photos don't do it justice, Jamal. 18. It's getting there, sir, Jamal said, gesturing to the expanse of the gym. We've got 50 kids enrolled this semester, most of them on full scholarship thanks to the Settlement Trust. We're teaching martial arts, sure, but also financial literacy, conflict resolution, coding. We're giving them the tools to navigate a system that's often rigged against them. The Admiral nodded slowly, watching Darius correct Jordan's stance with infinite patience. You turned a battlefield into a garden, son. That's not an easy thing to do. We had help, Jamal said humbly. We had people who stood up for us when they didn't have to. The Admiral reached into a canvas bag he was carrying. I brought something for the office, a housewarming gift, a little late. He handed Jamal a heavy rectangular object wrapped in brown paper. Jamal tore it open. It was a framed photograph professionally matted. It captured the three of them, Jamal, Darius, and the Admiral, standing on the courthouse steps 2 years ago. The sun was hitting them, and for the first time in the photo, Jamal noticed that he and Darius were smiling. Not a smile of arrogance, but of relief. At the bottom, a brass plaque was engraved with a quote: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Jamal felt a lump in his throat. He ran his thumb over the frame. "Thank you, sir. This means a lot." "I thought about Daniels today," the Admiral said suddenly, his tone dropping an octave. Jamal looked up. The name no longer carried the sting it once did. It was just a word now, a relic of a past life. "Yeah, he's up for a parole hearing in 2 years, the Admiral said, looking toward the mats. "I was asked to submit a character statement. I spoke to the warden. Apparently Daniels hasn't changed. He spends his days in the library writing appeals, blaming the system, blaming politics, blaming you too. He still believes he's the victim." The Admiral shook his head, a look of genuine pity crossing his face. "He's rotting, Jamal. Not just in a cell, but inside his own head." Jamal looked back at Darius, who was now laughing at something Jordan had said, clapping the boy on the shoulder. The sound of joy echoed off the high ceilings. "He's in his own prison, Admiral," Jamal said softly. "Even if they let him out, he'll never really be free. He has to live with the man in the mirror. He has to wake up every day, knowing he sold his soul for a power trip and lost everything. That's a life sentence I wouldn't wish on anyone." "And you?" the Admiral asked. "Do you still think about it?" "Only when I look at these kids," Jamal replied. "I think about how easily one bad cop could have ended their futures, and I make sure they know how to survive it. We didn't just win a court case, Admiral. We won our lives back, and we're using them." The Admiral smiled, a rare, genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Carry on, Chief. Carry on." "Hey!" Darius's voice boomed across the gym, breaking the serenity of the moment. Jamal turned to see Darius grinning, pointing at Jordan. The kid looked hopeful, almost bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Jordan just asked if graduating the leadership course means he gets to drive the Raptor," Darius shouted. Jamal laughed, a deep, full sound that chased away the last lingering shadows of the past. He looked at the Admiral, then back at the kid. "Tell him if he gets straight A's and perfect attendance, we can talk about him washing it," Jamal yelled back. The gym erupted in laughter. The Admiral chuckled, patting Jamal on the back. Outside, the world was still complicated, still unfair, and still dangerous. But inside these walls, 2 warriors had planted a flag. They had turned their trauma into armor for the next generation. Karma had done its job by taking Daniels down. But Jamal and Darius had done something better. They had risen up. And that is the story of how one corrupt officer tried to break 2 Navy SEALs and ended up breaking himself against the wall of justice. It's a reminder that true strength isn't about a badge or a gun. It's about character, discipline, and having the brothers who will stand by you when the fire gets hot. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story. And let me know in the comments, do you think Daniel's sentence was long enough, or did he get off easy? I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I still remember the day everything changed for me like it was yesterday. I was sitting in that cold courtroom, shackled in an orange jumpsuit, watching a man in a police uniform lie through his teeth while the whole world waited to see if justice would bend or break. I felt the weight of every stare, every whisper, every assumption people had already made about 2 black men who looked suspicious. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the quiet rage of knowing how easily one person's prejudice and power trip could erase years of sacrifice, discipline, and service to this country. But then the doors opened, and Rear Admiral Robert Whitaker walked in. Not as a savior swooping down to rescue us, but as proof that honor still exists in this world. That truth, when backed by courage and evidence, can shatter even the thickest wall of lies. In that moment, I learned something deeper than any lesson Bud/S ever taught me. Real strength isn't about how hard you can hit or how fast you can run. It's about restraint when every instinct screams to fight back. It's about trusting that character outlasts corruption, that patience can outlast panic, and that the quiet dignity of doing the right thing, even when no one's watching, eventually brings the reckoning. That corrupt officer thought he held all the power because he wore a badge. He lost everything, his job, his family, his freedom, not because we destroyed him, but because he destroyed himself the moment he chose ego over integrity. And we walked out free, not just in body, but in spirit. We turned pain into purpose. We built something that gives kids in tough neighborhoods the tools to rise above the same kind of injustice we faced. So here's the lesson that still hits me hard every single day. Never let anyone's darkness convince you to dim your own light. Stay disciplined, stay honorable, stay patient, because the tide always turns for those who refuse to become what tried to break them. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a time you held your ground or wish someone had held theirs, drop a comment below and tell me, what's the biggest lesson life has taught you about standing tall when the world tries to push you down? I read every single one. And if stories like this, real karma, real justice, real heart, light a fire in you, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more coming. Let's keep telling the truth together.